Hello again, and welcome to another live video. Anyone who pops in, hello. For today, we're going to be looking at the overall idea that we should not be here. I shouldn't be here. Anyone who watches this, you probably shouldn't be here. However, we are here. And the reason we're here is divine providence, God's will, His love for us. We're going to start in Genesis 15, verses 9 through 21. And this is God's covenant with Abram, who later becomes Abraham. So the Lord said to him, "Bring me a heifer, a goat, ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon." Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, arranged the halves opposite each other. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. The birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. As the sun was setting, Abram fell asleep. Then the Lord said to him, "Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a country, not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your fathers in peace and buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure." When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said to, and he made a covenant with Abram and said, "To your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river of the Euphrates, to the land of the Kenites, Canaanites, Kadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites." Now, this is the Old Covenant from the Old Testament with Abram, who became Abraham. This is a blood covenant. God walked through the halves of the animals. He walked that bridge of blood. Okay? This is culturally significant because the only way to break this covenant meant whoever walked those halves has to shed their own blood. So remember that. Now, we're going to move all the way into the New Testament, and we are going to start in Luke 22, verses 39. This is Jesus at the Mount of Olives. Now, keep in mind, the whole idea is that we should not be here, all right? Where would we be without coffee? I think that's a valid question. Bean juice, as it were. I don't know about you, but if my coffee's anything but black, I don't want to drink it. Okay, keeping with the idea that we should not be here, but we are. We're going to be in Luke 22:39. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." I think we should keep that in heart as well. That should be a prayer that we all pray. Pray that we not fall into temptation. Side note, the Lord's Prayer should be said every day. He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." He doesn't want to do it. I don't know, some people think, or maybe have this idea that Jesus was willing. It's like, well, I mean, it's not that he wasn't willing. Would you be willing to die on a cross? Then hush. An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. Now, I don't know about you, but if there's something I don't necessarily want to do, but I'm going to do it, and then all of a sudden I start sweating blood, I'm going to be going to the hospital. I start sweating blood, you're going to be gone. Hospital. Whatever it was that I was thinking of doing, that can wait. Fun fact, sweating blood is called hematohidrosis. It's a real medical condition. Also, side note, Luke was a doctor. That's why we only see that little detail in the book of Luke. When he rose from prayer and went to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. Why are you sleeping? He asked them. Get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. Again, side note, pray constantly because the devil's always coming for you. If you're always praying, he can't see you. You're protected. That's a little thing I always tell people. The spiritual warfare in this world is real. It's constant. The devil's always looking for you. But if you're praying, can't find you. All right, we're going to move forward to Luke 22:66. And this is Jesus before Pilate and Herod. Now, we've covered the first little bit. You're a normal person. Sweat blood. That's it. I'm already out. The crucifixion story, like if it was me in place of Jesus, sorry about you, mankind. I'm sweating blood. I got bigger fish to fry. Jesus allows himself to be arrested. I'm also realizing I should have kept reading. Anyway, while he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man was called Judas. One of the 12 was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus asked him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, Lord, should we strike with our swords? And one of them actually did strike the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. But Jesus answered, no more of this. And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Now, for modern times, if you're going to arrest someone, people probably have guns, or they will probably resist at some point. And what happens? People will start getting beat up, shots may be fired, people start getting hit. It all goes into absolute chaos. And it makes it so much worse for whoever was about to be arrested. Jesus knows this. He knows how the Romans are. So he says in verse 51, no more of this. Because he knows what has to happen. And again, me being me, if I had a bunch of my buddies with me and I didn't want to be arrested, like I knew I needed to do this, but I didn't want to do this, I'm calling it there. Like, yeah, fight those Romans. I don't want to be here. But he said no more. And he got arrested. Now, let's fast forward to 66, where Jesus is before Pilate and Herod. At daybreak, the council of elders and the people with the chief priests and teachers of the law met together, and Jesus was led before them. If you are the Christ, tell us. Jesus answered, if I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God. And they asked, are you the Son of God? You are right in saying I am. Then they said, why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips. Go back to the culture. Okay? You might think, like, oh, okay, so he said they're right in saying that he's the Son of God. Why is that so bad? In that culture, and in the Christian community, period, claiming to be the Son of God is blasphemy. What is blasphemy? Blasphemy is, or can be, a number of different things. But essentially, it's mocking God. Also, side note, don't mock God. It's a bad idea. It's one of the few things that God actually says you don't really come back from. I probably should have had a scripture reference for that before I said it. All right. Strike that. Well, not strike that, but yeah. Anyway, so you are right in saying he has now essentially claimed to be the Son of God. To them, this is blasphemy. Blasphemy carries a death sentence. So, culturally significant. Now, Luke 23, 1 through 25. Then the whole assembly rose. Oh, I want to make a note here. He could have just simply said, no. And a normal person would have been like, who is definitely not God, would have said, no, I am not the Son of God. And I wouldn't even be lying. And it would have ended right there. They're like, oh, well, we heard some complaints and people were throwing shade at you and blah, blah, blah. But hey, if you're not, go away. You know, never would have been a crucifixion. None of what happened next would have happened. So let's recap. There's 3 moments here. The moments at the Mount of Olives where he's praying. He's sweating blood. He could have called it there. Any normal person would have. He goes to get arrested. He could have had his disciples defend him. He could have slipped away. But he didn't. He could have said no when they asked him that question. But he didn't. These are 3 significant moments here in the book of Luke where he could have turned back. But he hasn't. So let's continue. Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, we have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Christ king. That first one is actually false, by the way. He asks him, are you the king of the Jews? It is as you say. And Pilate announced to the chief priests in the crowd, I find no basis to charge him. They said he stirs up the people. He started in Galilee and he's all the way here. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was Galilean. Then he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction. He sent him off to Herod. He's like, okay, well, none of what you're saying is true. Take him to Herod. Herod is the kind of king of the Jews right now, I guess you could say. He's the character that we see in the Christmas story, King Herod and the wise men. It's that guy, same guy. So he's off to Herod. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform some miracle. A little bit of a twist there. Herod was actually a Jesus fan. Interesting. So he questions him. Jesus gives him no answer. And again, that's another opportunity. Herod definitely had the power to save Jesus. And Jesus knew that. So, didn't say a word. Chief priests and teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. Pilate called together the chief priests and said to them, you brought me this man as one who's inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and found no basis for charges. Neither has Herod. Therefore, I will punish him and release him. With one voice they cried out, away with this man, and release Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a murderer and an insurrectionist, and some believe a zealot. A zealot, imagine a jihadist today was a zealot back then. And that's just how it was. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them and said, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept saying, crucify. All right, this is where we're really getting into the culmination of the fulfillment of the prophecy. For the 3rd time he spoke, why? What crime has this man committed? I have found no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him punished and released. But the loud shouts grew incessantly louder for him to be crucified. And finally, Pilate decided to grant them. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to the will of the crowd. This truly is probably the greatest love story that you could reference. He could have said no at any point. He could have just been done and avoided all the pain, all the beatings, the mockery. He didn't have to carry that cross. But he chose to. He chose to anyway, and I'm telling you, I wouldn't have done it. But anyway, let's move on. Luke 23:26. As they led him away, they seized Simon of Cyrene, and he assisted in carrying the cross with Jesus. A large number of people were following him, women who mourned and wailed, and Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the barren women, the wombs that have never bore, and the breasts that have never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us, and the hills to cover us.' For if men do these things when the tree is green, then what will happen when it's dry?" Two other men, both criminals, were also led with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they were crucified along with, and one on his right, one on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they were doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. People stood watching. Some sneered, and they said, "He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Christ, the chosen one." And that's a valid point that I feel like a lot of people miss. Even at this point, he is now nailed to a tree, sitting upright, nails in his hands and his feet, probably some rope to support, crown of thorns, bleeding. His guts are probably hanging out a little bit. Even at this point, he could have been done. He could have said, "You know what? We're done. I'm getting off this cross. I don't want any part of this anymore." But he stayed. He stayed for me. He stayed for you. And I got to tell you, I wouldn't have even let him put one nail in me. I would have jumped off there like, "Nope, I'm out. You know what? Everything I was saying before, not feeling it anymore. We're out." But not Jesus. He stayed there. He continued what he was doing, the fulfillment of the prophecy. One of the criminals spoke to him, "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him, "Don't you fear God, since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what we deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said to Jesus, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus told him, "I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise." It is now about the 6th hour. Can you imagine holding yourself up, nails and in your feet, spread eagle, for 6 hours? And that's what crucifixion was, guys. Suffocation. Prolonged suffering. Suffocation. Darkness came over the land in the 9th hour, for the sun had stopped shining, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." When he had said this, he breathed his last. And even the centurion overseeing this said, "Surely this was a righteous man." When all the people had gathered to witness the sight they saw, they beat their breasts and went away. But all those who knew him, including a woman who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance, watching. And that's why I'm here. That's why you're here. That's why we're all here. Because of one man's sacrifice. One man's love for his creation. So I leave you with this thought. Ask not what God can do for you, but what you can do for God. Bless all of you.